Bringing you the top stories from Bonners Ferry to St. Mary's and everywhere in between. This is the North Idaho Prepcast with Ryan Scaggs.
That's right. It's another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down everything going on in Districts 1 and 2 in the state of Idaho. Brandon Baney joined as always by Ryan Scaggs. What's going on?
Not too much. Just enjoying the snowfall outside.
Okay, you got a little snow up north.
We do. Yeah,
first
we have
of the year?
No, it's the second, but it's the first actual significant snowfall. So we got probably 2.5, 3 inches on the ground, but nothing too crazy. But supposed to have a bunch more the rest of the week. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, for sure. I say it's always a good sign when we start the podcast off talking about the weather. So
yeah, well, luckily we're not playing outside anymore, so that's okay.
Yeah, so exactly. So let's move it inside. The first coaches polls of the season came out this morning for both girls and boys basketball. We're going to take a look at the girls polls, and because for a lot of teams, they're like a third of the way through the schedule already. I hate how early they start girls basketball because I feel like I'm just getting my feet under me, and we're already almost halfway through the season.
Yeah, it's the way it works too. I mean, obviously I understand because volleyball does end so quickly after sorry, my dog is pawing at my leg. Yeah, I mean, just with volleyball ending so briefly, and then you don't really get to wind out the football playoffs because we put so much into that too. And so you jump right into basketball, and it's hey, guess what? We're a third of the way through the year, and we haven't even gotten boys basically kicked off yet. There's still some teams that have yet to play. So yeah, it's kind of.
Yeah. All right. So if we look at teams from up north in the girls basketball coaches poll, first one of the season, 5A, no surprises here, Ryan. Lake City is ranked third. They're 6-0. Coeur d'Alene is ranked fourth. They're only 2-0.
Yeah. And, both those teams, I think we kind of talked about it last week on the Prepcast was, we knew that the Coeur d'Alene girls were going to be really good. But the Lake City girls are pretty darn good too. They've been, putting the bootstraps to some Spokane schools, and both those teams played some Southern Idaho teams last week and going undefeated in those games. So they got to play the Boise schools, or a couple of them at least, and fared very well. So they're flexing their muscle early on. Hopefully, I think it'll continue throughout the rest of the year. The IEL is going to be pretty tough. Once they get into the league schedule. So there's going to be some L's taken obviously there, but
yeah, eventually these undefeated teams will start playing each other. And so something's got to give there, right? Nobody at the 4A level ranked in the coaches poll. There's only 3 teams. So
yeah, I'm not too worried about that one.
Right. 3A girls basketball coaches poll. We have Timberlake ranked third. Now they're just 1-1, and Kellogg is ranked 5th. They're 4-1. So Timberlake, I think, is getting a little bit of the respect vote there because they've been such a strong program for so many years. But Kellogg, we thought that this could be the year that, with Coach Nearing and company, this could be the year Kellogg makes that jump.
Yeah, and both those teams are, solid programs. I mean, we know what Timberlake is. Obviously, they've been showing their pedigree. They're young this year, but they're talented. I mean, they've got some players. That Kellogg team is going to be for real. I think that they're going to make some noise at the state tournament level. Both those teams absolutely will. Wouldn't be surprised if they're playing, Saturday, playing for some hardware. So, but I think the North this year, boys and girls basketball, I mean, all classes, I think the cream of the crop might be coming out of the North in most classes. I think that there's obviously some, the sugars of the world want to have a say about that in some of the classifications too. But there is some solid basketball up here in North Idaho this year.
No doubt. 2A classification. Grangeville is ranked third in the first coaches poll of the year. 4-1 start for the Lady Bulldogs. So we know they're going to be awfully tough in the CIL, the Central Idaho League. 1A D1 ranks. It's very well represented. Lapway, the top ranked team in the poll, 2-0, and then Prairie ranked third at 3-1. Now in that 3-1 start, Ryan, they're 3-0 in the conference, so they're already, 3 of their 4 games have been within the White Pine League.
I want to say that, and their one loss may have been, was it Grangeville? I think that they lost to. So, the Pirates are a respectable program. It's, we saw it last year that going into the state tournament that the White Pine League was going to be very well represented at state with some quality teams. And it's much the same this year. That Lapway girls basketball team is solid. I don't know if they're quite the level of the boys team, but they're every bit as good. Obviously they played very well last year, and they're going to probably, in my case, I think we kind of talked about it, be the favorite for the state championship. But yeah.
Yeah, for Prairie, the big question is how do you replace Madison Shears? She was so fun to watch last year. Such a great guard, especially defensively. But Prairie finds themselves in the first coaches poll of the year. And then at the 1A D2 level, we talked about Kendrick, being like the heavy favorite up north. They're 2-0, but they're only ranked third in the coaches poll. And I think that's simply because they haven't played as many games. Rockland and Council are each 5-0. They both tied for first. So.
And the meat of their schedule is going to come up obviously later in the year. They're going to be playing more dates, back-to-back nights, stuff like that. But Kendrick is a good program too. And I don't want to say we're going to have the Rodney Dangerfield effect again, but it'll all work itself out. You get later in the year. I don't think we have to worry about rankings too much early in the season. But that girls team is definitely a force to be reckoned with.
Definitely. Well, if you want to see all of the coaches polls, girls and boys basketball, you can find that. Excuse me. You can find that on our website, IdahoSports.com. It's right there on the homepage. On the boys side, especially, I didn't think it was worth talking about because we're going to do our boys basketball preview, and some schools haven't even played yet. So I thought it was a little early for that. But
yeah, and I mean, especially when you're going to be running into before New Year's. I mean, the majority of the schedule in North Idaho is going to be against Washington teams for the big schools. So they haven't even really faced each other yet. I don't think that the records are going to indicate much until they start, getting into the meat of the IEL schedule or the IML schedule.
Yeah, so those are the coaches polls. Those are on the homepage. Also on the homepage are all of our statewide previews. Every boys and girls basketball team has at least some info in there. And so, Ryan, we're going to transition now into our boys basketball preview for the season. It was last week was kind of the opening week. And so, there's a couple of things we can glean, but really we're still kind of in the early part where we're talking about what could be this year. And like you said, on the girls side, there's a lot of good quality teams up north on the boys side this year in basketball as well.
Yeah, I had a chance. I know that we'll kind of kick things off, with the 5As, but I've had a chance to finally I did go watch Lake City for a couple quarters the other night, and that team is worth the price of admission. It's like the rich got richer when that Nathan Hawking transferred in from Ferris and Spokane. That kid's legit, and that team is absolutely stacked. I mean, they can go the full meal deal as far as going up and down the floor on defense and offense. They're absolutely stellar.
I mean, you look at it for Lake City this year, and let's just talk about it. The 5A IEL, Lake City, the heavy favorite.
Yep.
You look at Colton Mitchell at point guard.
He's really good.
Zach Johnson on the wing.
He wasn't even on the floor in one of the games, and that team's still blowing the doors off of University High School. So
yeah. So you got Mitchell at point guard, Johnson on the wing, Blake Buchanan at center. Ryan, you could put those three guys on any of the other teams in the league, and they would automatically become the best player on that team.
Absolutely, yeah. You could spread those guys out and scatter them amongst teams, and they would become favorites. Let's put it that way. I mean, that's how good these kids are. And the thing about it is they're unselfish. You watch it. I mean, they're they'll dish oops to each other, and they'll get it inside. They'll run their half court set, and they're not afraid to give up an open look if they got a guy cut into the hoop. They'll get it inside, or you find the open man on the outside. They can shoot the lights out from behind the arc too. That's the other thing about this team that really stood out just in the short period of time that I watched them. But Lake City, it's Lake City's world, and everybody else is living in it right now in North Idaho.
Yeah. Colton Mitchell in the season opener scored 38 points, tied a school record with former, obviously, Lake City great, but also former Montana Grizzly great, Matt DeLuey.
DeLuey was a stud, too. I remember him in high school in football, but him in his own right in basketball, he was amazing. And, to have those kind of numbers matching things that a player of his caliber did, that says a lot. And that's just in the first week, like there's a lot of time left in this schedule and in this season, and this team's only going to get better. That's, I think, the scary part about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm wearing my UCLA shirt today, but everybody on the podcast knows I'm from Montana. I'm a big Montana Grizzly fan. So, watching Matt DeLuey as a kid, I mean, he was awesome. So anytime you're
interject, but the Grizz beat the Eags this last week. So they're looking good in the FCS playoffs too.
Yes. In football, Eastern came in talking a lot of smack. Oh, we don't think Montana should have got a bye and all this other stuff. And the Grizz kind of quieted them. So
things are quiet in Spokane right now between the Eags losing and Gonzaga losing a couple games. So things have quieted down a little bit.
Yeah, I think they needed it. So so Lake City, overwhelming favorite, right? The question becomes, and probably the more intriguing question will be, who finishes second this year? Do you have a guess? Do you have an idea?
I think Lewiston's gonna be right there. The sneaky team is going to be Coeur d'Alene, just because they return so many guys back that, they've got athletes all over the floor. It's going to be kind of a look to see what they can do scoring. I think we know they can play defense, and they played it pretty well last year. It's just they gotta find out who's going to be their scorer on the floor. Lewiston, they've got Jace McArcher out there, who's a great player. Forsman's out there, Ecke, Hepburn, Ray. I mean, they've got guys on the floor that can score any given night. That can run the floor. If they can defend well, I think they'll find their way playing into the Idaho Center. But, it's obviously, I think, a bid and a half league. So they'll have to play that play-in game where I think they lost to Eagle last year. So Lewiston's got a little bit of an axe to grind, but they've looked good so far early in the year. I mean, it's really early. So we'll see what the Bengals can do. But I do like them as the number 2 team in the league.
Okay. Yeah. I think Braden Forsman really came on last year and is going to be a great player to watch there. Coeur d'Alene is a hard team to get a read on because their coach, John Adams, entering his second season, he'll play 10, 11 guys.
Yeah.
Night in, night out. And even the starting lineup changes from game to game. So it's a hard team to get a handle on. And he's more of the collective effort should get us wins, and we're all part of a system, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, the kind of the goal there is just to beat, or at least play ball with, kind of by committee, and make sure that you're matching up your athletes with your opponent. And sometimes different teams look different. So if he can run a smaller lineup out there, he can run a couple bigger kids out there and try to match up with whatever his opponent's throwing at him. But they're going to have to figure out the scoring issues this year. And if they can figure that out, they'll be a decent team. I think that they'll be a force to be reckoned with. Post Falls is going to be, they've got a really good freshman in Blake coming in, but outside of that, they only had one returning player off of last year's team. And Post Falls I have as the number 4 team in the 5A IEL, but they're going to have a tough road ahead of them with Lake City and Lewiston and Coeur d'Alene out there.
Yeah, you looked at the end of the bench last year, and it was a senior-heavy team for Post Falls. Jackson Anderson did play last year off the bench, but he is not this year. He's obviously a very talented quarterback, and I think is trying to stay, football, I think, is going to be his path at the next level, not basketball. Although he could probably pursue what he wants, but I think that's probably what's going on there. So you're right. Post Falls is a team that, Mike McLean is one of the best coaches around, and the coaching job he does this year will tell us a lot, because it is a pretty much a new group of guys. And so Coach McLean's a good coach, and I think even if they finish 4th in the conference, they're still going to be a tough out for anybody.
No, I don't think anybody gets boat raced in this conference this year either. I think it's going to be pretty even finish between the 2 through 4. I think Lewiston might distance themselves a little bit just because of the 4A teams that are entering into the league schedule as well this year, with, only one of the 4A games counts as a league scheduled game. But, it'll be interesting to see what happens with those 4A teams playing up to against the teams like Post Falls and Lewiston and Coeur d'Alene to see what they can do. But there may be a couple upsets. We never know.
That's right. But let's move on to the other part of the Inland Empire League, the 4A IEL. This was a tough league to peg. You've got 2 new head coaches, right? At Sandpoint, the new head coach is the name is escaping me right now. But at Lakeland, you have
Tony Hanna,
right, former Coeur d'Alene and Timberlake coach Tony Hanna. And at Sandpoint, The new coach there is Brian Childs, and he's coached
Yeah.
over in Washington the past several years. So you've got 2 new coaches in a 3-team league. Can you tell me anything about Lakeland? Because their coach didn't, Coach Hanna.
Yeah, I mean, they've got Waddington as far as height, but they lost so many guys off of last year's team. And on a solid team. I mean, they had a state placing finish. I believe they won the consolation final, if I'm not mistaken, or played in the consolation final game. I'm trying to recollect that one because I was doing the 1A D1 tournament. But I know that team was solid last year. Obviously, they had Skalski, who was the league player of the year. He's graduated and gone. So they returned Scotty Hawking at guard. They've got Colin Cameron, but outside of that, it's kind of some unknowns. I mean, that was a really senior deep team last year that made that state tournament. So it'll be interesting with a new coach and a new system, what happens at Lakeland. They're 1-2 right now. Obviously, I think they beat Kellogg. They've got a couple losses to East Valley and West Valley of Spokane. If they can figure things out early and see if I know that they've got some size. They do have some tall guys inside, so they'll be able to get the ball inside, but it's going to be their outside shooting and their turnovers, I think, is what's going to really be the key, because Moscow plays such good defense. And the Bears, I have them picked to win the IEL in the 4A this year. I mean, Jamari Simpson's a stud. And they've got, some nice compliments around him. But that Lakeland team, if they can get inside and keep the presence inside and keep I think the scoring lower is going to benefit that team just based on defense and what they have. I don't know if they have the firepower on the outside to compete with, some of the 5A schools.
Yeah. And for Sandpoint, the good news is they didn't lose much from last year's team. I think they only had 2 seniors, but the bad news is that they weren't very good last year. So
they can only go up, but
right. They had a very young team last year. A lot of sophomores on the roster, a lot of sophomores in the starting lineup. One of those sophomores, Colin Roos, did not go out for basketball this year. He would have been a very nice player inside for Sandpoint. So now you're looking more at them being a guard-oriented attack with Parker Pettit and Ari Vandenberg. It's all these guys we just saw in football. So it might take Sandpoint a little while to get their feet under them as they just played in the football championship.
Yeah, and you kind of look at it, it's like, if they can't run a 3-2 zone, they're going to be able to run a 32 dive pretty well with that lineup that they've got in there. But Vandenberg and Pettit are going to be great players in their own right. I know Pettit's obviously his bread's buttered on the football field, but Vandenberg is a pretty well served basketball player. He's going to be okay as far as that. I think he'll make all league by the end of the year after everything's said and done. But the Sandpoint squad is gonna struggle just a little bit. I hope Coach Childs puts things together and gets something rolling. I mean, they're 1-1 right now. They beat one of the teams that actually beat Lakeland. So, and I believe that was East Valley of Spokane. So, Sandpoint's off to a 1-1 start. So if they can get things moving in the right direction there, they've got the athletes. They've got, a decent sized student body, so they're going to get numbers turning out. But they're not losing kids to wrestling like they used to. But, I think the Bulldogs might be able to pull a surprise. It wouldn't shock me if Sandpoint finishes second and Lakeland finishes third. It really wouldn't.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Moscow, the favorite coming in based on the number of players returning and, the veteran coach of the league now and Josh Uhrig. So that's at Moscow. 3A
2 years in, and he's the veteran coach in the league. So
yeah, exactly. 3A Intermountain League. This is like the NFC South in football in the NFL, Ryan, where there's a different champ every year. Okay, 2019, it was Timberlake who won the league. In 2020, it was Kellogg. Last year, it was Priest River. I guess that means it's Bonners Ferry's turn, right?
Yeah, and you really, it's kind of like, let's just play rock, paper, scissors and see who wins the league title, because that's kind of how this ends up every year. It's pretty balanced, and there's no real doormat in this conference. They're all pretty tough, and they beat each other up. And any given night, any team in this conference can win a game. So I like Bonners Ferry's team. Just based off of, kind of what they brought back from last year with scoring and defense. Priest River, to me, I differ, because I know that there's who I think when they do the previews, it's either the coach, they go based off of what the coaches submit for the preseason rankings, or how they think the league will finish. I think Priest River is going to finish second in the conference. Pre-server's got a pretty good core coming back with Barrett and Krager and so like that and Jordan Nortz, that team's going to be pretty solid. I think they've got great guard play. Timberlake's kind of the unknown because you have Higgins, but then you have like all these football players that come in that they're athletes. But it's kind of like, one night they might be playing shooting guard. The next night they might be playing power forward. You just never know how that lineup's going to shake out, until they figure it out towards the end of the league schedule. If they do well in the league tournament, that wouldn't surprise me just because athletes, it translates well to the game of basketball at the high school level for the most part. But Bonners Ferry, I've got 1. Pre-server 2. Kellogg, I've got 3. Kellogg wouldn't surprise me if they win it too with the Luna brothers. I mean, they've got some athletes in their own right that can play. So it's a very balanced league. I don't know if anyone stands out that's going to like go to state and make some noise, but I definitely think that as far as the competitive balance in North Idaho, Kellogg right now is doing pretty well. I mean, they beat Lakeside of Plummer. But I mean, obviously that's a huge jump in classification. But yeah, that league's pretty balanced, and it should be interesting to see how things finish up by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think I like Priest River to repeat as conference champs. I think they've got the best overall player in Trenton Krieger. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch this year, and it's going to be fun to watch how the other teams try and contain him as best they can. So
one player to watch out for is Asher Williams from Bonners Ferry, the freshman. I know that they were really high on him coming in and actually, scoring some points for every game. So we'll see how he does if he's on that varsity lineup and in the lineup every night too.
Yeah, it's going to be just like in football, right? This is going to be a fun league to watch night in, night out. Yep. All the teams very evenly matched. Now we move to the 2A Central Idaho League where, you look on the surface and you go, yeah, St. Mary's won not only the league last year, but they won the entire 2A state title, right? Second in school history, first since 1960. But then you look and go, man, they lost a lot of good players from that team, including a couple of key starters.
Yeah, but they returned some dudes too.
Exactly. And I think if you look beyond the surface, you'll see that St. Mary's is locked and loaded and ready to run it back again this year.
Yeah, and that because I know it was their JV team was like 19-1 last year.
Yes.
So it's like we talked about like Lake City, the rich getting richer. It's kind of the same thing down the road in St. Mary's. That Lumberjack team is loaded with Gentry, Ross, Sands, and then you've got our buddy Colby Renner who hits. I mean, Mr. Clutch hitting the 30-footer to send him to the championship game. So, that team they played Lapway last weekend, and that was a close game. I think it was a 5-point game. So that's a really good litmus test early in the year if they can play the Wildcat stuff, and taking that task on this early in the year. That's kind of a good sign, I think, for that St. Mary's and Coach Chase's team. Like that, I think they could repeat very well. I mean, like that team is pretty loaded with what they brought back.
And again, this is a team that prides itself on its system. They pressure you defensively, and they love to run the fast break and use that pressure defense to convert easy layups. The big question for St. Mary's is going to be last year when they needed a play, whether it was a shot or a steal or a rebound, Eli Gibson was the guy. He was the guy they leaned on. And so the question becomes, who is that go-to player this year? You look on the surface, Tristan Gentry, the center, is the best player coming back, but as a big man, he still needs somebody to get him the ball. So the question is, who becomes that go-to guy?
Yeah, I mean, it could be, like Ross or Sands. Renner, I don't see handling too much, but he's just more like, I just love the way the guy plays because he's going like 100 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour zone. But yeah, I mean, if Ross can handle the ball and keep the pace of the game and distribute well, or Sands, that St. Mary's team is going to be really good. We know that they've got size inside. If their guard play can match what they bring down low, they're tough out. I know that they've got a gob of kids back behind that, coming from that JV team that are hungry too, that want to, mark their name in school history too. So this year could be a nice test for them. I don't know if they win it all, but they could definitely place. Next year, I think that they could find their way back to the title game again with just that core nucleus they've got of some really good sophomores. And it may be a kid that we don't even know about yet. They just shows up and just plays his heart out the rest of the year and comes off the bench, in the first few weeks and all of a sudden makes a name for himself and finds his way in the starting lineup.
Well, I'll tell you, last year, nobody outside of St. Mary's knew who Colby Renner was. And then at
Yep.
state, he made a name for himself, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So I just want to mention one more thing about St. Mary's. They've made a pretty tough schedule here because I think they think that they're going to be in the mix again and they want to challenge themselves. You mentioned the Lapway game they lost 59-53. They're going to play Lapway at their place later on this year. They've got a home and home with Lakeland and Sandpoint, a pair of 4A teams. And then also they've got home and homes with Timberlake and Bonners Ferry and Kellogg, all three teams that we think are going to be pretty good in the Intermountain League as well.
Yeah, so they're going to be battle tested. If they can come out of that, and with only, 4 losses, let's say by the end of the year, that's, I don't want to say favorites for a 2A title, but they're pacing themselves pretty well to finish pretty well down there in Southern Idaho.
And then we'll talk about this as we get closer to the event, but they're going to a tournament at Owyhee, the new high school in Boise, the week before Christmas. They set up a big school bracket and a small school bracket, and that small school bracket's got a lot of good teams from the 2A, 1A ranks. It's got Westside, Castleford, St. Mary's. They'll play Malad in their first game there. Homedale is there, a good 3A team. Ambrose, the team that St. Mary's beat in the championship last year, is there as well. And then you've got Aberdeen and the 3A runner-up from a year ago, McCall Donnelly. So depending on how that tournament shakes out, St. Mary's could get some more good games down there. So
yeah, very well. And that's the thing. I mean, we look at kind of small schools in that conference too. I mean, I got St. Mary's 1, Orfino 2, Grangeville 3. I think Grangeville is going to struggle a little bit this year. I know that they bring back Lindsley and Fry and the February, but outside of those 3 guys, it's going to be tough finding, who's going to be their top scorer any given night. But Orfino, I think, could surprise some people this year. I think that they play really well, really good defense, and they're pretty athletic. They'll stretch the floor. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Maniacs make a little noise. I don't think either of those 2 are going to knock off St. Mary's by any means, but I think that they could have a couple decent seasons. But
yeah, I think it'll be fun to watch those teams and chart their progress as the season goes along. 1A D1, the White Pine League, Lapway. Can anybody dethrone the Wildcats?
All right, so I got Lapway. I mean, I don't want to say in a runaway, but I don't know in this year's league if there's anybody that's going to challenge them. If there is, it's Kamei. Kamei is my 2 seed. And I deviated from what the coaches picked. I think the Cubs are going to be pretty darn good. Just with the nucleus of players that they've got between Krog, Skinner, Mercer, like those guys, they can spread the floor. They can go inside. They can shoot from beyond the arc. Kamei, I think, is a sneaky team, especially when you get to the state tournament. I think Kamei could make some noise for sure in the state tournament if they find themselves there. I've got Logos 3rd. I don't know if you want me to just go through my rankings and we can talk about each individual team. But
let me do the coaches poll.
Sure, go ahead.
And then we'll get into yours. So in the coaches poll, the preseason coaches poll, Lapway 1, Logos 2, Prairie 3, Kamei 4. I'll go with the top 4, and now you give us your top 4.
So I got Lapway 1, Kamei 2, Logos 3, Prairie 4. Then I got Genesee, Troy, Potlatch, Colorado Valley outside of that.
Yep, and that's the same. That lines up with the coaches.
Yeah, and don't be surprised Genesee finds them. They're always competitive. They were kind of picked in the middle of the pack last year and ended up finishing pretty well. Troy's got some good players. I mean, they got Blazard and Stoner. They're both good players. So, any given night they might be able to get 20 plus out of Blazard. But it'd be interesting to see what the rest of that lineup can do. Potlatch was rebuilding from last year. They're just super young. I mean, you've got Brown and Howard, but that team was just struggled last year. And so you can only, like we talked about a couple other teams, you can only go but up. Clearwater Valley I have as the final team, but their team right now, they're 2-0. They've won a couple games already early in the year, and they've got Schleiper and Francis. So they've got some players in their own right, but I'd really look at you could put Lapway's starting 5 on any team in this classification. I don't care. That's a state playoff team. So you could put them at 4A, 5A. It doesn't matter. I'm still seeing them playing in the state tournament between, obviously you've got Titus Yearout, who's going to your University of Idaho, but you got Case Wynot, who was my Idaho. He was the tournament MVP for IdahoSports.com. As a freshman, he's a sophomore. He's coming back, and he's jumping out of the gym this year. So you've got Cross Taylor, who can just absolutely knock it down from three. Ty Ellenwood Jones is an amazing point guard who distributes very, very well. AJ Ellen was a great complementary player inside, great rebounder, nice defensive presence, doesn't find himself in foul trouble a lot. So, that Lapway team, I look to them, they're going to repeat. I'm just calling it now. It won't surprise me, but that team's repeating. I don't know if there's another 1A D1 team or 2A team that's built like they are.
Yeah, and we talked about Lapway with their schedule, playing St. Mary's twice. They're going to go to Lewiston and play in the Avista Holiday Tournament. They're really limited by what they can do with their schedule because the White Pine League is so big, right? 14 games are dedicated to the conference, but I do like what they've done here, and I really love Coeur d'Alene for picking this game up, Brian. And you were the first one that was kind of on this. It wasn't on my radar because this wasn't on the original schedules for either school. This was a game that was added late. Coeur d'Alene is going to host Lapway, a 5A school hosting a 1A D1 on December 18th. That's going to be really fun.
That's going to be a fun game. So that'll be next week or next weekend. But, kudos to the Vikings. I mean, Lapway literally put it out there at the beginning of the year of like, we want to play a 5A team. We don't care anytime, any place. It doesn't matter who. It could be in Pocatello. It could be in Boise. We don't care. We want to play the big boys. And, I know that Coach Hill at Fresno State was that way in football. He's like, we don't care anytime, any place, anybody will play him. And that's the mantra that this Lapway team has taken. And so kudos to Coeur d'Alene for picking up that game. I think it's going to be a great game. I mean, it won't surprise me if Lapway wins that game. It wouldn't surprise me if Coeur d'Alene wins that game either. I think that the competition, we saw Lapway last year play Lakeland, and Lakeland ended up getting the win in that game. But Lapway played them tough for 3 quarters, just ran out. They didn't have the bench that Lakeland did, and they just ran out of gas. But it'll be a great game. I think that, this Lapway team's kind of got an axe to grind because they feel like they've got to prove something, even though they're defending state champs. They're trying to prove like, no, we're the best team in the state of Idaho.
Yeah. So Lapway won. I agree with you. Second, I think it could be Logos or Prairie. Flip the coin. I know you like Camei. The question
Prairie's got Rambo coming back, who had a couple great games in the state tournament last year. So, yeah, I mean, Prairie could be good too. Very well could be very good as well.
Yeah, I'll mention that one of our broadcasters for IdahoSports.com, Garrison Hardy, is an assistant coach at Logos this year. So
he's going to be mad at me.
all success and or non-success can be his fault.
Yeah, my DMs are going to blow up from him. Like, what, you're slighting us now? You don't think we're good enough to be number 2?
Just a total disclosure. That doesn't sway my opinion on, whether I think Logos just is good. They have a good basketball history, generally speaking.
Well, they played great down the stretch last year too.
Yeah. Yeah. So the big question is the league gets 2.5 bids. The third place team from the White Pine League will play the district champion from the Scenic Idaho Conference. We saw it in volleyball this year as well, where the White Pine League was able to secure that third spot. Do you think it happens in basketball also?
Do I think that the third place team from the White Pine will beat Lakeside? Because that's who I have winning from that league. But I
don't think so. I
like Lakeside actually. Vander Brown is good. He's super good. He was on my first all tournament first team last year in the state tournament. They graduated a lot of guys, but they've got a couple solid dudes coming back. Lucky Matt, who was a youngster. I think he was our player of the game in the opening game of the tournament. He had like 14 points and 12 rebounds and like 5 blocks as a freshman. I like Lakeside. I do. I think the White Pine only gets 2 bids.
Yeah. I mean, Vander Brown, look at these stats from last year: 14 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals per game as a sophomore.
Yeah. And he just flat distributed. He could dish it, but I also think, if I'm not mistaken, he hit the buzzer beater to win it in the third place game, or was it the third or fourth place game? But he won it in OT for Lakeside. I know that Wayne Zubak had the call in that game because it was during our championship game that we had coming up after that one. But it's Vander's a stud. He was great in football, but I think he's even better in basketball. That's definitely his sport, and he's probably one of the best point guards in North Idaho, hands down. Like, I don't care any classification. He's a great basketball player.
Yep. And then, we have to acknowledge the class that just left for Lakeside as well. You're talking about 3 4-year starters, J.J. Hall, Day Higgins, Kenyon Spotted Horse, all just tremendous players on their own right, but the way they came together for what's been a good little mini run for Lakeside has also been very fun to watch. So,
yeah, and Spotted Horse was a dude. He was an absolute just gamer. And so they did lose some guys off that team, but they had some guys that showed up that came in spot duty off the bench last year, especially in the state tournament, played pretty well. So I think, they were without Higgins in the championship, in the tournament. So, he got hurt last year. So they played most of the season with him, but then didn't have him in the playoffs. And that definitely hurt that team, because I think that they could have probably played Lapwai in the title game with a little bit more size inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Lakeside, I think gets the third bid from North Idaho and makes their way back down south again this year.
I agree. I think Wallace and Genesis Prep are still a year away at least.
Thing about Genesis Prep, though, they return their entire roster. So they've got some experience, with Caleb Schroeder. And then Wallace has got, they graduated their best couple guys, but they do have Goldale back. But it's Lakeside's league, and as far as that goes up north in District 1. But I like Lapwai and Cami out of District 2.
Yeah, Genesis Prep, same players, new coach. Lon Marast comes over after. Wow.
That frog got stuck.
Wow. Usually I'm able to work that out as I'm talking, but no, not that time. New coach for Genesis Prep, Lon Marast. He comes over from Oregon after a long coaching career over there. So,
yeah, I think he'll do well for the Jags. I think that they've already responded pretty well to what he's doing. They're off to a 1-0 start so far, but it'll be interesting. That league is pretty balanced and even. I think the Lakeside coach was being nice and picking somebody else besides his own team to win it, so everybody was like tied for first in the coaches poll. But I do think Lakeside's the favorite. Genesis Prep wouldn't surprise me to finish second. I just don't know if they've got the system in place yet to knock off Lakeside.
Yeah, what made the coaches poll kind of screwy was that the new coach at Genesis Prep abstained from voting because he said, "I'm new. I don't really know the dynamics yet." So it kind of made things tough.
Yeah.
That's a little inside baseball for you there. Let's move on to the last division, 1A D2. Starting the White Pine League because they get more teams to state. Hey, just like in football, just like in girls basketball, Kendrick, the favorite in boys hoops.
Boy, they've got Ty Kep, Boyer, Hewitt. Morgan. The same dudes that we were talking about in football. It might take them a week or two to get warmed up. They're off to an 0-1 start. They lost to Cami in their first game, but this Kendrick team is good, and that's not a bad loss if you lose to Cami the way they did. So obviously Timberline was the qualifier last year. I don't think they're going to repeat it this year. They lost too much off of last year's team. Kendrick's just got dudes on dudes as far as talent. Deary was awesome all year, and then kind of laid an egg in the district tournament and, found their way on the outside looking in. And they do have a 6'8" kid in Taylor coming back, but they're super young. I don't know if Deary's going to make the run like they did last year. I think it's Kendrick's league to win. But you do have Highland could make some noise. Hambley might be the best guy in the conference, best overall player. He might be one of the better 1A players in the state too. So, Highland could make some noise just based off of his play alone, but he's got to have a cast around him. I think Kendrick's just got too many athletes to, they play so gritty. That's the thing is they just grind teams out, and if they don't score, they're just going to absolutely suffocate you on defense. So I like Kendrick as the number 1 seed. And then I think Highland finishes second, Timberline third.
Okay, I've got Kendrick 1, and I've got Timberline finishing second. I think Timberline returns a lot of players, not necessarily guys that were impact. They kind of came off the bench and now they're in the starting lineup. But I like Timberline in that second spot. And so it's kind of the same question that we had at the D1 level. The second place team from the White Pine League will play the league champion from the North Star League. That's going to be Mullen, Clark Fork, and Kootenai. How do you see that one shaking out? That was a tough one to figure out as well.
I don't think that the District 1 gets a team to state this year. I look at what the teams have come in. I mean, Mullen, yeah, you got names like if you're playing football, you got Trogdon and Nelson and Ziegler. Like you got guys that you've heard of. They can play defense, but like their coach talked about, they're going to have struggles shooting the ball night to night. And so, they might play a lot of games where they either win like 31-29. I mean, just kind of an ugly up and down the floor, try to get rebounds and putbacks. That's going to be your offense hope and win at the free throw line. In that league, I mean, it's kind of like pick your poison. Clark Fork returns the most. Obviously from last year, they made it to state, but they made it to state with only 4 wins. I think that it's going to be a 2-bid league from the White Pine to go to state. I think that they're going to get both the 1 and the 2. And that's nothing against the other teams. Kootenai returning a team for the first time in a while, so they're kind of an unknown. I don't really even know, what they've got coming back because they didn't play last year, and so it'll be interesting to see. Clark Fork, I know, has like kind of the most to lose, but yeah, I do like Kendrick, and I think that it's going to be, like you said, Timberline getting that second bid or Highland.
Yeah, Carter San Roman, I think, is the best overall player from Clark Fork, but Mullen might have better 2, 3, 4 guys. The game we're going to want to watch then, Ryan, is very late in the season, February 9th. Mullen travels to Weippe to play Timberline. That could be a preview of the play-in game, right?
Yeah, a battle of 2 of the smallest schools in the state of Idaho. So, yeah, that's going to be an interesting game. I think I like the scheduling of that because it's going to could be a preview of a state play-in game. Very well.
Yeah. So that'll be a game to keep an eye on. That's all the way in February, though. There's lots to sort out between now and then. But I thought this was a good primer on what's going on in basketball up north. I think big picture, you look at Lake City at the 5A level. You look at St. Mary's at the 2A level, Lapwai at the 1A level. I think at least half of the champions could very well come from the north again this year.
Yeah, very well. I think Lake City has the nucleus there that can take them very, very deep. And the thing is that they could be doing it for a couple of years because that team is so young too. I mean, they've got sophomores contributing. They've got mostly juniors. So that team is going to be primed and ready to go. They've looked good early and they're only going to get better. That's the scary part. That's really scary for other teams. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no doubt.
I would love to see Lake City play Lapwai actually, like early in the year. I would pay good money to see that game.
Right. We all wanted Skyview to play Sugar Salem in volleyball, and it didn't happen. And, maybe we can get this game going because the schools are a little closer to each other.
Yeah. Maybe in the Vista Holiday Tournament, we see like a Lapwai Lewiston matchup or something like that. That would be cool.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. That'd be a lot of fun to watch. So that's kind of the boys basketball primer. We're really diving into it this week, and we'll be back next week to talk about what we saw, what stood out to us in the early going for boys basketball. But Ryan, this time of year, wrestling is off and running as well. And this is another sport where the North, generally speaking,
juggernauts. Let's put it that way. There are juggernauts in the North.
Yeah. Give us some early thoughts on wrestling.
Yeah. So wrestling, I mean, Coach Reardon at Post Falls does such an amazing job. They've been the cream of the crop in the 5As in wrestling for a long time. I think every team in the North in the last 10 years has won a state title except for Lake City. Lake City's getting better, but you got Coeur d'Alene out there that they've got a deep roster coming back to. They have one of the best wrestlers in the nation in Rylan Rogers. He's actually going to be wrestling in the Ironman, which is over in Ohio this winter. I think it's over Christmas break. Because if you don't know the history there, he grew up in Clarkson, Washington, which is where I grew up, and then went to Blair Academy, which is over in New Jersey. If you follow the sport of wrestling, it's like that's the mecca of high school wrestling as far as anywhere in Pennsylvania. But he went there and did very well for himself with the COVID things and everything going on there and shutdowns. Came back and they've now resettled here in Coeur d'Alene, and he's settled down as a Viking, and he's doing a great job there. And that team is just absolutely loaded. The cool thing that I'm super excited about the state of Idaho did, and they've really expanded, is the girls wrestling in the state of Idaho is expanded, and numbers are up statewide, which is amazing. I grew up coaching in the state of Washington. So, I mean, we had a huge wrestling input there. Washington is one of the biggest states in the nation for wrestling as far as participation goes. Idaho's upward trajectory is awesome. So especially for girls, and Idaho's got some favorites. I know Randall's from Coeur d'Alene is a favorite to win it all in the girls ranks. So there's a lot to do. I think wrestling Post Falls is going to be obviously your favorite just because they've got a system. It's like they reload year after year after year after year. Their little guy programs are amazing. Coeur d'Alene's going to be my number 2. I wouldn't be surprised if they go 1-2 at state. That wouldn't surprise me, or at least top 3 finish for the Vikings. Lake City is going to be a force to be reckoned with as well. Lewiston's not far behind. So those top 4, I mean, they could all be in the top 10 after Saturday night in February. And then in the 4As, Lakeland's been the historical, like, kind of powerhouse. They've been a top 5 team every year in the 4As, at least for the last decade. I see that continue. They've got like Devin Suko, John Cornish, Lucas Williams, guys that we're used to hearing in football. They're actually better on the mat. And that's where I think Lakeland's going to flex their muscle a little bit. It's the upper weights are solid. They've got some really good young guys in the lower weights. So the Hawks will be solid there. Moscow is young, but they're good. They've got a nucleus that's coming in. Their freshmen are ridiculous. So this Moscow Bears team in the next few years could be really, really good. They took the time building that youth program for a number of years. I know Coach Needham that was there for a while running that youth program, but now Coach Amos is taking that over, and they're rolling. That Bears team is going to be good, especially I think late in the year. 3A, I'm looking at Timberlake as a favorite, followed by Kellogg, Bonners Ferry, Priest River. The IML is a solid wrestling conference. I don't know if you're going to get the state champ out of that conference, but they're going to at least get a couple top 10 teams out of there. And then the 2As, I like the Maniacs. Clearwater Valley's got a really good upcoming team. They're deep. More kids turn out for wrestling now than basketball. Pretty awesome. Things are happening up there in the Clearwater Valley up in Kuski. Potlatch has always had a couple really solid guys, Grangeville, Kamiah Prairie, and Wallace. So there's a lot of good wrestling up here in North Idaho. Hopefully we've got a couple of matches this year is the goal that we could broadcast on Idaho Sports. I know that I've been really poking and prodding Paul to make that happen because there's a couple showcase matches, especially late in the year, that and a couple of the better tournaments in the nation are actually up here in North Idaho. So we've got a couple of really, really good tri-state tournaments coming up next week, not this weekend, but the following weekend. So there's a lot of action going on and a lot to follow in wrestling. And those that listen are diehards, like they're going to kind of know what I'm talking about. But Post Falls, I think, is going to be right there as a force to be reckoned with again. And I wouldn't be surprised if they walk away with the title again. Yeah. And that's my wrestling. I know I rambled, but that's what I got.
No, that's really good. I'm really looking forward to diving into these specific tournaments and matchups and things like that as we get really going into the season. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, because Coeur d'Alene and Lakeland wrestle tomorrow, and Lake City. So Lakeland will wrestle Coeur d'Alene and Lake City tomorrow. There's a tri-duel going on, which is going to be great. I'm looking forward to that matchup. That's kind of the early season test. You get to see who's finally rolling out their lineups. Post Falls and Coeur d'Alene will wrestle soon as well. There's a lot to watch and a lot to be looking out for. There's some great tournaments coming up. So I'm excited about wrestling in North Idaho this year.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Ryan, I thought with winter sports, things would slow down for us, less sports to talk about, but this was like one of our longest podcasts ever. We're running up on 50 minutes.
Yeah. Sorry, folks.
That's good, though. We had a lot of good content this week, Ryan. You really do your homework, which I appreciate and our listeners appreciate as well. So a couple of ways to get this podcast. If you're listening, IdahoSports.com or wherever you download your podcasts. You can also catch the video each week on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel as well as our Facebook page. All right, Ryan, enjoy the snow. Hopefully it's not too bad up there.
No, it's not bad right yet.
Okay. We're
a hardy bunch up here. We're all right.
Yes, we'll be back next week. We'll recap that tri-duel with Lakeland and the Coeur d'Alene schools for wrestling. We'll recap all the big things that happen in boys and girls basketball, and that's what we'll do each and every week here on the North Idaho Prepcast. So enjoy the competition this weekend, everybody. We'll see you back here next week on IdahoSports.com.